I know that a lot of people sometimes it's like they don't want to get things checked out because they're afraid if it was something bad, the sooner that we figure it out, the better. If you have a gut feeling or something, act on it because it might not be as big of the worst case scenario as you think.
Hi, I'm Emery Kibler, and this is The Space Between. I'm a cancer survivor and a mom, and while those roles don't define me, they have shaped who I am. I created this space to share honest stories, expert insights, and meaningful support for families navigating life with cancer. If you're balancing treatment, caregiving, parenting, or just trying to hold it all together, you are not alone. This is your space to connect, to heal, and to feel seen, and I'm so glad that you're here. We are talking to Elissa Kalver. She is a metastatic breast cancer thriver. She was diagnosed when her daughter was less than a year old, and she is the founder of WeGotThis.org, and her new book, We Got This: How I Learned to Thrive with Terminal Cancer, is just out. Let's get started. Elissa, thank you so much for being on The Space Between. I'm so excited to have you on today. I have really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit, and I just freaking love your energy on your Instagram all the time, like just showing up, like sharing what's going on, helping people, sharing your information. And so I am just like so thrilled to have you here because I know that we're going to have some fun, even though we're talking about cancer, because we are still living our best life. And that is why you are a total rock star and an inspiration. So thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. And the feeling's very mutual. So I'm excited to be here and appreciate all you do.
Thank you. Our listeners didn't get to hear this, but we had a funny joke before we started recording. And will you share your cancer reveal story with us?
Yes. And what I loved most that came out of this is you were saying like gender reveal or things like that. And I was saying that if it was, a confetti instead of blue or pink, it would be my husband's hands, because luckily one morning when I was getting dressed, my husband just like jokingly copped a feel and felt a lump in my breast. And what's so interesting about that is it wasn't like I hadn't had anything that I had explored before. I did. I was feeling off just nowhere near my breast. It was like my feet were going numb or other kinds of symptoms. And I'd already been seeing a lot of specialists and just doing all the workup. So I had had a breast exam just 2 months prior. And even now, like from experiencing recurrences and times when I know that there's a lump in my breast, like I've had multiple recurrences being metastatic and all of that, there are certain times of the month or times a day or different things where like I can't feel it. And then there are other times where it feels huge. I don't currently have it, but like I had a recurrence the end of last year and I ended up having like a fist-sized tumor grow back in my breast. And there were literally days where I couldn't really feel it. And I'd be like, oh, I think it's actually shrinking. Maybe it's not growing. And then the next day you'd feel like a golf ball. A lot of that can really change. And luckily, my husband and I love each other and he was present. So yeah, I think, have you told yours on this before? Because I think it deserves telling.
I don't think I've ever told mine, so I will share it. It is actually funny when you look at it in hindsight. So beginning of the pandemic, we moved upstate, and like every cancer cliche moving upstate New York story, we got chickens, and they were little baby chickens, and my then 3-year-old wanted to play with them all the time. So she apparently was playing with them on the dining room table when I didn't know, and they must have pooped on the dining room table. And I ended up getting salmonella. It was not pretty, but the salmonella irritated or triggered something in my cancer that it started bleeding. And so that started rectal bleeding, which is a sign that you can't ignore. And so that was what really prompted me to seek medical attention and to continue to advocate for getting help, because for months and months, doctors continued to tell me that there was nothing wrong with me, that it was probably hemorrhoids or IBS or something else. But it was really the chickens in the beginning that the chickens probably saved my life, because I may not have ever had bleeding and I may not have ever had symptoms, because colorectal cancer a lot of times has no symptoms. That's why it's like it could be a secret killer. So thank you, chickens, for your salvation. And my reveal would be little chicken confetti coming out. Thank you, chickens.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I hate it. I hate that's the case, but
But
if it's
we've
going to
got to
be
look at the bright
there,
side.
who better to identify it than chickens? Like, I
I know, but
really,
they're cute little baby fluffy chickens. Thank you.
yeah, I was saying that's one of the best cancer, discovery stories, and it's wholesome in its own way. So thank you for sharing that. I'm glad we kicked off with those.
Yeah. And just in case anyone doesn't know, what is metastatic breast cancer?
Sure. So I didn't know what the word metastatic meant before having it myself, and it's basically interchangeable with stage 4 as we know it. And what it really means is that when the cancer spreads far away from the origin site. So in my case, where it's breast cancer, when I was diagnosed, what's called de novo, so meaning that I was metastatic off the bat or stage 4. It had already spread to my lymph nodes, but then far away to my liver and my lower spine. And so that's what really pushes it over from maybe being stage 2 or 3 to being stage 4. That can happen de novo like it was right off the bat with me. I was diagnosed at 34 with no family history. And then it can also unfortunately happen in recurrences. But a big thing that I like to talk about and bring awareness to is that even though it's so scary that like at such a young age, you can get such progressed cancer. A lot of people always say like, oh, well, you've caught it early, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
no. But luckily, there are a lot of advancements in treatments, and the ability to live with it is pretty amazing. And it's different for all of us. We have different types, different points of treatment. There's chemos that have worked really great for me that haven't worked for other people I know, and vice versa. Everyone is really unique. And the idea of metastasis or metastatic cancer is really its own thing. Like, just like there's not one type of breast cancer or one type of colorectal cancer. We're all a little unique and different. And so it's more than I ever thought I would know about it, but it's important. And I appreciate you asking because I think it's important for people to understand what it is. It's not like I have liver cancer or, bone cancer. I have breast cancer that spread to those areas.
Thank you for that. And when I was first diagnosed, I was very confused about all of that as well. It says a lot of information, a lot of things we never wanted to know that we become experts on. I wanted to ask you, you were a new mom when you were diagnosed, and I've heard from many new moms that when they're trying to get care, lots of things get blamed on postpartum and that experience. Can you share a little bit about your experience in getting diagnosed as a new mom and what that was like for you?
Absolutely. And yeah, unfortunately, I did have a bit of that experience, especially because my symptoms, like I was saying, they were very far away from where the problem actually ended up being. So after I had my daughter, normal postpartum stuff, I had a C-section and all of that recovering. I recovered really well and felt good. And then it was, a few months after that I was starting to play tennis again and some other things. And I'd be like on the tennis court for like 20, 30 minutes when I like couldn't keep my shoes on anymore because my feet were getting so numb and swollen. I thought it was plantar fasciitis. I was like doing physical therapy. I was doing massages and nothing was making it better. And so that's when I started, going to the doctors, getting specialists. I went to a rheumatologist. I, even went to my OB, and did all that. Not that I thought it was breast cancer or something gynecological. I just was like, wow, we're at it. Let's just make sure I'm all good. Going through pregnancy and having a child is a lot, as, moms know. And I just wanted to make sure my body was okay. And when nothing popped up, I still kind of had in the back of my mind that something was off, but I had kind of crossed off a lot of the things. And I never would have thought it was cancer. I mean, it's not like what I would jump to from thinking I had plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
And so, well, I did get dismissed in that way a bit, depending on the doctor, saying things like, well, you had a baby and like it usually takes over a year for your body to snap back and for these things to feel better. As soon as Eric, my husband, did find my lump, it was taken very seriously and it moved very fast. So what normally as a 34-year-old would be hard to get approved for a mammogram or something like that without history or any reason, immediately the next day I was able to get a mammogram and ultrasound. And that's when they did the biopsies, and it turned out it was malignant. And then it was the PET scan where I found out that it was metastatic.
You always know you need to worry when they're like, oh, we can squeeze you in tomorrow. That happened to me when I went to see the colorectal surgeon finally after like 10 months, and was explaining my symptoms to him. And he was like, I think that I could move some things around. And do you think you can come in tomorrow? And I was like, okay, that should have been a red flag to me. But I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Well, he's so nice.
In hindsight, I always say that. Like, there are certain things where now I'm like, oh, I should have known, but how do you know I've never been through it? And I'm so grateful that I was so naive. Like, I really
too.
Right? Like, I had the extra couple weeks of tests and waiting on results, because biopsies aren't fast. So even though like the mammogram and ultrasound is quick, but like you have to get the biopsies done. It takes time in the lab to figure that all out and, these things. But I'm glad that I had the extra couple of weeks of not thinking I had cancer, because in hindsight, even though I do very much have cancer, it wouldn't have changed anything. And it's easier said than done. It was easier for me to do because it was so authentically, I really did not think that was the issue. But, at least I wasn't stressing out over it for this inevitable outcome that it was anyway. And then when it did happen, obviously it was a huge shock, but having all the information made it at least that I could start finding out what's next. Whereas had I had in my mind, oh my God, I think I have breast cancer for the weeks leading up to it, I still didn't know what the different things like hormone positive or HER2 positive, these different types of breast cancer, I didn't know what any of that meant, or other indications like would I need chemo? Would it be surgery? Would it be both? And having the shock, at least during a time where I could get some of those answers, where we already did a lot of the tests, I think in the crevices of where you're grateful, like that was one of the areas that I was grateful for.
You definitely, the waiting for the test to come back is always the worst. And it seems like it just takes forever. So I'm glad that at least you weren't waiting for those tests in that time.
Well, it's funny because I did have to wait a little bit longer for the PET scan because of it was 4th of July weekend. And I was anxious simply because I knew that the PET scan needed to be done before I could schedule chemo. So I wasn't anxious because I didn't know that it could get much worse. I guess theoretically I did, right? I knew that cancers can spread and all that, but that again was not on my mind.
No,
it was we must have caught this early. How
of course,
could this
you're young. You must have caught it early.
Must have. Yeah. And that's where I didn't have scanxiety at the time. Like I didn't have the knowledge to be scared of the PET scan yet. And so again, naive Elissa, I'm grateful for. And I learned a lot from there. And I do feel like, and I try to really advocate for this a lot, is I know that a lot of people, sometimes it's like they don't want to get things checked out because they're afraid if it was something bad. And when you think about finding out that it is kind of the most progressed it could be. It's, I've had growth in my brain a year later that is now full response and under control. It can get bad and there are solutions, and the sooner that we figure it out, the better. If you have a gut feeling or something, act on it because it might not be as big of the worst case scenario as you think.
Definitely. And thankfully, there are so many treatment options and innovations now. So you do want to find out, you want to know whatever your scenario is as soon as possible and get all the information so you can go right into action. I want to talk to you about your daughter. You were a new mom when you were diagnosed. And she was, of course, too little to understand at that point, but you had some really interesting thoughts on the way you communicate with her about your diagnosis and your life. And I'd love to have you share that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, my daughter, Ellie, she was turning 1 when I was diagnosed, and she's about to turn 5. So it's pretty wild. And it's really changed a lot throughout the years of how we've handled that based on her age. Like when she's 1, there's nothing to explain to her. but there's physical changes happening and, me needing to rest more and things like that. And at that age, we found that some of our biggest fears, like her being afraid of me if I'm bald and all these things, in our case, didn't end up being an issue. Like when I did end up shaving my head, I came home and she was like laughing and giggling and petting it and like thought it was like funny, and fun. And I have pictures of her just like resting her head on mine. And then kind of after the initial day, it wasn't really a thing. And now that she's older to like understand things, and she doesn't understand everything. We're very open about cancer, but we don't drill home that I'm like sick or, we don't talk about like necessarily that I could die. Like we kind of sprinkle it in through different things, and talk about death and other stuff as it relates to all of us in life. But what was interesting is this was several months ago. We were just on our way home from school and I parked in front of the house and she said to me, she said, "Mommy, I don't like when you didn't have hair. I really like your hair now. I like when it's long. It's beautiful, like a princess." And I thought that was so interesting that she like even thought of that. I was like, "What made you think of that? Like, did a picture pop up or, something?" And she was just like, "I don't know. I just thought of it and I really love your hair and how long it's getting." And so I pulled up on my phone the video of her laughing and petting my head. And I was like, just so you know, like, you probably don't remember this, but like you had a lot of fun, with my head when it was shaved. And, it made it a good conversation where it's like, yeah, a lot of us do probably feel like we'd rather have hair, but embracing the moments that I don't know when I switch chemos if I'm going to lose my hair or not. And I most recently switched in the new year and this one doesn't commonly cause hair loss and I haven't experienced any, luckily, but if it did, I'd still need to be on it and we'd need to go through that. So I try to kind of preface as much as I can and give her as much knowledge as I can. And there's no perfect recipe. And I follow as many things that I find helpful in that. Books have been really helpful. And just talking to other moms and, not even just cancer moms, like just being a mom in general, these scenarios, as I'm sure you know, it's like, it pops up about all sorts of things, not just cancer. It can be much smaller scale or bigger if we lose people. Or the other night, I was tucking her in and she started understanding the concept of death when she learned about presidents, which I thought was so interesting because she'd be like, she learned about George Washington and she's like, "Can we visit George Washington?" And I was like, "Well, no, he's not alive anymore. He'd be very, very old." And that concept didn't trigger her to think about my cancer. It was actually the other night I was cuddling with her at bedtime and she just started crying. And I was like, "Is everything okay?" And she's like, "Well, Daddy's hair is getting a little gray and he told me it's because he's getting older and I don't want Daddy to die." And it was so interesting, like being a mom with cancer and being so worried all the time that you're going to have to explain these things to your daughter. And then she's upset because of, my husband's silver foxness coming in a totally different direction. And so it keeps you on your toes. And they're so much smarter than I would ever imagine at the ages that they are.
They are so much smarter and they're very intuitive. It's also interesting that you're the one that has the cancer and she's bringing up your husband because that is a normal thing. It's a question that every kid asks. Like I remember, my kids being at that age when they're like, "Mommy, are you going to die?" And I was like, "Someday, yeah, someday everybody's going to die. Someday you're going to die." And their reaction to that and the conversations. And it's just a natural conversation that you end up having to have. But your conversation is a little bit different because you're including in the cancer element to it too, as well. And then you're continuing to just be open and honest with her about what's happening in your treatment. And I mean, I made the opposite choice with my kids that I regret, and you like look back and you're like, "Whoa, wish I could go back and do that different." When I had an ostomy for 4 months and I decided that it was only going to be 4 months and I was just not going to tell my kids because I just thought there was going to be this whole bad reaction from the younger one. And ended up like, I was like trying to hide it in the bathroom and all these things. And like afterward, I was like, why wasn't I just more open with them about it? Now I feel like it's best just to like be as open in a way that their age group can understand. And like hiding things just makes it more difficult because it like brings in the fear factor. And the kids can feel your fear because then you're afraid they're going to find out and they're going to see the truth. And honestly, the truth usually ends up being better than however we may put it. So there's my blooper there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a lot of just like in life, we meet ourselves where we're at. And, you know, at that point, that's what felt right. And I think that hopefully it's not scenarios you have to do again. And it's like we can only put our best foot forward in anything, you know, as humans and parents and all these things. At the end of the day, I think that we figure it out. Like, and that's interesting what you said of, because it is true sometimes that the fear or something that we project could actually spiral them into thinking things are much worse than they are. Sometimes it's just like being afraid to get scanned or checked out because you're worried about the result. Like a lot of times that buildup of anxiety and fear can be worse than the actual result. Or I don't know, I'm trying to think of another word.
100%. It's your fear about your kid's reaction, your fear about what's going to come back on the test. Because no matter what you get back, when you hear the truth or what the answer is, then you can deal with it. And the fear kind of goes away. Even if it's not the result you want, you still in like a weird way sort of feel better because you're a little bit relieved that you're not waiting there. I teamed up with Stacey Eagle and Elise Ryan to create Sea Waves of Support, healing selenite bracelet sets. You keep one and gift the other to someone facing cancer or life's challenges, a powerful reminder they're not alone. Learn more at seawavesofsupport.com. I want to talk a little bit more about parenting in cancer. Without a cancer diagnosis, being a mom is a lot. In my previous life, I founded a community of working moms called Hey Mama. I've heard from so many moms in every different way. It's just a lot to kind of get through life and motherhood and all those things. And then to throw a cancer diagnosis on top of it and ongoing treatment and all of that, it's like, it's a superhuman lot. How do you manage on days when things are particularly tough and you're not feeling like you have a lot of energy to still hold space for being a parent?
It's hard. And of course, there's feelings of guilt and other things that come with that. And it has helped me to be as upfront as possible. You know, I talk more openly about like, Ellie really wanted me to run around outside with her yesterday. And it was like 90 degrees here in LA. So like, even if I didn't have chemo last week, it would have been hard for anyone. And so, you know, being able to like allow yourself to just say like, remember mommy had chemo last week and like, if we can do an art project or, you know, watch something together, but if you want to play outside, can we grab daddy and he'll run around with you? And there's definitely those times where on her end, it's like, well, no, I don't want daddy to do it. I want you to do it. And these things. But I think that the more that I normalize it and make it not something that I'm like ashamed of, then she feels that and knows that like, I'm okay. It's hard for me to do certain things at certain times. And having those reminders is tough. And I'm like still working on it for sure. And it's like each year, especially in this toddler phase, is so different with what they understand and what they're doing. And it was about 6 months ago that someone in her class, her dad got diagnosed with leukemia. And so the teacher let us know, and they've been really great at like the girls actually become close and they do extra artwork for us. So like I get this like special card every day from Ellie. And it's not like she's doing it with this understanding like, oh, I could lose my mom. Like it was just kind of, they related it like of adding something special for what we're going through. But when I heard about the girl's dad going through leukemia and chemo, that really opened my eyes to the fact that like I can't control when Ellie learns about someone's grandparent or parent or someone dying of cancer, or if someone else shows up bald and then she may recognize that like, wait, my mom used to be bald. Why are they bald? So I don't want her to put these pieces together blindly. Like I don't want her to know cancer, know these things just around being sick and dying. And so I think the more that I let her know that I'm living with it and her seeing these things that we do, we were on a cruise a couple weeks ago and, that, yeah, I can't go run around outside every day with you, but I still do go and run outside with you. Those are the pieces that are most important for me, that she also knows cancer by living.
And she also sees you being so full of life, so passionate, heading off to Las Vegas. Like you have a book that's out or coming out,
Coming
and you're
out, yeah.
speaking, so many things. So she sees you like living your life to the fullest.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's so adorable, like with the book. So the dedication is to a couple people, and the first one is to her. And whenever someone's over, I've given someone the book and she's there, she always runs over and she's like, Mommy, did you show them my name in the book? And so she feels ownership of it. And when she sees the We Got This logo or the W or anything that says We Got This, she now knows what that looks like. And she'll look at it and go, cancer sucks. We got this. And I love that she feels empowered by it and like ownership of it. And that's a big piece. And that's what I said in the dedication to the book, is that I want her to always know, even if I live to be 100, like I just want her to always know that I lived fully and more because of her. And I think, having people in our lives that we feel that way about is really special. And I'm grateful that I have that.
That is so special. And is the book out now?
It's coming out June 3rd. It's pre-orders right now on Amazon, but I mean, soon enough, just a few days here. Really excited for it to launch and more people to get to read it. It'll be followed up with an audiobook a couple weeks after. We're just in the editing phase of that, but putting together kind of a compilation of, it's not just a cancer book, right? I mean, it's how I learned to thrive with terminal cancer, and it's really utilizing some of these revelations that I've had based on that. But it's also pulling from other experiences of my life that I didn't realize would prepare me for something like this. Like I played field hockey in college and I was a financial advisor. And these other life experiences, I've run marathons for charity and owned a gym. And there's different things throughout our lives that I think cancer shouldn't be the prerequisite for living fully. And I think a lot of times we say that and we hear it. I've heard that before, like before I had cancer, people being like, don't wait for something terrible to happen. And I lived a good life before, but I definitely live with a different kind of intention now. I feel like I've become an amplified version of who I always was in a very unapologetic way. And so, yeah, that's all kind of wrapped in there.
Yeah. And it just makes you shout your story louder. Like it pushed you to put all of that, all the things that you've learned together into this book. And I think it's going to inspire a lot of people, whether they have cancer or not, to know like, hey, I can live my life to the fullest. I know that I have today. We don't know about tomorrow, but I know that I have today, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do something that's meaningful to me, make an impact.
Well, and yeah, and it's so true. And I agree with everything you said. And I'm curious from your perspective, if you hear there's sometimes too, because, sometimes people say like, well, regardless of cancer, like we could get hit by a car, or like any of us could die. And it's true. We're all terminal. And I think there's like a balance there for sure, in the sense that I kind of always thought of it like, it's like, yes, that's true. It's kind of like we might all be in the car and we all could get in a car accident, but, we might be the ones that don't have the seatbelt and are in the more dangerous seat and, are at the higher risk. And it's that knowledge and, maybe that fear that if you were in the car not as secured, that you'd feel a little bit more uncomfortable, a little bit more anxious. And I think that's, kind of the best analogy I could think of like living with cancer, even in remission or cured. Like these are, and it's not just cancer, right? You could fill in the blank for other things. It's just these are the kinds of things that gives you a different kind of perspective on what can happen. And I felt that way experiencing grief, and other things too. I feel like I experienced new levels of empathy I didn't quite understand, or know how to like reach out, what people would want. And you still don't know because we're all different, but putting our best foot forward and kind of having those experiences as a silver lining, I feel like it's something that helps us identify more with peers in the cancer community, but also just peers in life. Like we're all going through something that can make things really tough.
Yeah, empathy, I think, is definitely something that became really amplified for me. Every time I would get on a call with someone and they seemed a little off, I'd be like, I bet something's going on for them. And I always was asking myself then, because I know that I didn't lose my hair and I always looked healthy, because the colorectal cancer, usually the chemo, that's not one of the side effects. And so it made me really think about whoever I was interacting with, like what might really be going on with them. Why did they not show up today? Why were they late? Why was this happening? And I just immediately think that there's probably something big going on in their life, maybe not cancer, maybe like with someone something's happening with someone they love, or they're struggling with something. And pretty much everybody has something that they're going through, and it's all different levels and health-wise and things like that. But just as humans, being able to be compassionate for each other and for ourselves, and empathetic for others, I think is one of the huge silver linings, one of the things that I am really grateful to have learned through cancer.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. Well said.
I want to ask you about something that is also a big question that I get from some of the other thrivers that I talk to. One of the big topics is how to get the support that you need when you're going through treatment, when you have cancer. And it can just be so overwhelming when people are coming to you and asking you, they all just want to help and have the best of intentions, and you're just so tired and you don't even know what you need, really. And I know that you created wegotthis.org. Can you explain to us how that can help to alleviate some of this stress and help people to really be able to support their friends and loved ones?
Of course. So that was the piece. When I was diagnosed, that was the piece that I coming back to, that was really this like unintentional burden of kindness. And it felt so wrong that like all these people want to help. It's not that you don't want their help. You don't know what you need. You don't really want to ask for help. And it just felt like, why don't we have more solutions around this? And it wasn't that long before that I had been using a baby registry, and back when getting married, using a wedding registry. And it's like, why don't we do these things in the hard times also? And make them feel normalized, not just charity. And so that's where this idea for a nonprofit gift registry for cancer patients came in. And I started a GoFundMe for that, and we raised over $100,000 to really get this going. And what that really told me was that, yeah, there's a certain amount of family and friends who, like, because I didn't do a GoFundMe for myself, they would have like donated some amount, right, to help with what I was going through. And where this was my ask, like, this is what I want to do, certain amount are contributing just because it's you and they want to support whatever it is that you say, but not 100,000 worth. It started becoming where people I didn't know were donating, and people were regularly donating as they were seeing us grow and me starting to implement these funds. And, now it's fully functional. If you go to wegotthis.org, not only has the registry been functional, we have nearly 10,000 users now, but we also just revamped the site and added two pieces that I'm really passionate and excited about. One is a resource directory. So that was another piece that I found really difficult when being diagnosed, is overflow of resources. So just as many people who want to help you with buying you things and that, there's a lot of people who want to help by sending you a lot of resources as well. And they can be great resources. But imagine you can, right? You're going through treatment and you have all these articles to read or all these websites to go to. And, it's like finding the right help can be really hard. So we built out a pretty robust resource directory where you can search for other nonprofits and free resources with different filters. So whether you're a caregiver or a patient, survivor, thriver, if you need financial help or wellness or going on a retreat, there's so many different things. There's a lot of filters without trying to make it too overwhelming, but you can also search for things. So that's something we're continually growing, and that I think is great. And there's just so many wonderful nonprofits. I wholeheartely believe that we're all better working together. We all either do different things, or if there's overlap, then there's, hopefully need for that overlap, and that people can just know more about what exists. And then the other piece is a recommendation shop. So in our registry, you can register for anything you want. So it could be off of Amazon or Target or, Etsy or direct store website. You can also request donations like GoFundMe. So you kind of have all the options there for what you need. But a lot of people were really asking for more direct recommendations. And so that's something we've been working on figuring out the best way to implement it. So we've implemented in a couple ways. One is through Thriver lists. So in the community section of our website, you can see like the top 5 recommendations from different thrivers, like myself and tons of other friends. And it lists what type of cancer they had or have. And that way you can kind of like see if you feel more connected to a male or female experience or like whatever that might look like. We're continually growing that. If anyone listening, and if you have any that you'd want to do, would love for you to create a Thriver list. The more the merrier, because it just gives people so many more examples of what was helpful. And then the other way that we're doing recommendations is through our shop. So we're actually able now to do a dropship model with some of our partners, like Oxford Pennants is one, these cool pennants behind me. Like this little one, you probably can't read it, but it just says, "This sucks." And the founder of Oxford Pennant, his mom was getting cancer treatment. And he just made this, she was in the hospital like for a stay, and he made a giant pennant and put on the wall, and it just said, "This sucks." And he's like, that's what she needed, like that was what she identified with. And so sometimes it's things like Nampons. We do like nose tampons. The company Nampons is great. I get a ton of nosebleeds from chemo. And it might be medical things, wigs, bras for post-mastectomies, all these kinds of things. But also, like, I really encourage people to register for concert tickets and nights out and like things that just make them happy and their environment feel good. So by creating this shop, it allows us to curate the recommendations on our website. There's a button to click to add it to your registry directly. And then there's also an option to purchase, which, a lot of times it's not that necessarily the patient's purchasing. Obviously you can, but that way supporters know. Because I'll still, I get messages all the time. My friend was just diagnosed. Can you kind of, let me know what I should get him or her? And I mean, the first thing is I really encourage people to start a registry. I think that the gift of specificity is so important, and we deserve that. Even if we don't know it yet, like utilize the Thriver list, check us out on Instagram, see some of our recommendations and stuff. Because when you think about, like, I use baby registries as an example, people aren't just picking out random bottles for you or what diapers you're going to use. Like, you're selecting that and then letting them know which ones you want. And I think that's the same way with how many options there are for port accessible things, or like the accessories you would have needed are totally different from what I would need. I wouldn't even know the first thing, I'd have to learn from you. I would go see your Thriver list if it was, or call you up. Those are all elements that I think are so important to not be afraid to ask for help in this way. I think that this facilitates that process where it's simple. If people are texting you, it can be like, because my thing was always like, appreciate it so much. I don't need anything, but thank you for reaching out. And so now you can just be like, you could still say that. I don't need anything. Thanks for reaching out. If you do really want to get me something, here's a link to my registry, because people are going to get stuff for you regardless. Yeah. And that's, everyone has their item. I don't know if you had the item you got much of.
Oh, I have like 25 blankets.
That's mine too. Mine was blankets, which, I kind of joke.
But
yeah, I'm like, I love blankets. And it's like, I even got like the same words of affirmation ones from Amazon in different colors and stuff. Some in the same color. And yeah, other ones I've heard a lot of are coloring books, candles, other things. And I always thought of like when I was initially going through chemo, and I think now value this a lot, is like, if I was going to have blankets, like I wasn't any more into having a bunch of something. Like I wanted to have like the one I loved, you know, like that really good quality, like one that makes me feel best. Yeah. And so, yeah, all those things. But yeah, so we're blanket buddies.
That's blanket buddies. That's amazing. So really, you're just making it easy because you're working on that overwhelm, which is really one of the biggest things that you have beyond like your actual medical challenges. It's like the overwhelm of navigating all of the different resources, all of the things that you're looking for, and then managing, the outpouring of love from your friends. And I'm so excited that you have created this and that people are able to go on there and register and do that. And especially that you even said fun things, because when you have cancer, if you're going to ask for something, you're going to ask for something probably that's related to your cancer without someone prompting you, like you saying, hey, you know what actually might be better for you is to do something that you enjoy, because boosting your mood is one of the best things that you can do for your health. Like having a good time, being surrounded by loved ones, getting out of the house, going to listen to some music, engaging in the like quote unquote like normal things that you would do. I think that that's some of the best medicine that you can have outside of actual medicine. And I always encourage people to do that. So like experiences, or taking your friend out or loved one out to do something that they have said that they want to do. That's so special.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's so important. And I think that's really the nice thing about the registry too, is what I've heard from people is that they just get a little self-conscious to like ask for things that aren't related to it. And first off, most of the stuff you need for cancer, like how unfair is it? It's stuff you wouldn't be buying otherwise, you wouldn't need to spend money on, and it's just, that's a bummer that you have to spend on that. And it's great that people want to help out. But then on the other side too, like you can let your supporters decide how they want to help. And some people might, want to get you those things. And I know if I'm looking at someone's registry and they want something like, more in the category of joy and fun, like that's the thing I want to be a part of helping with. And I just think that every chemo is different, right? I've been on 5 different lines of treatment over the past 4 years. And it was like my initial most stereotypical chemo, where it would be kind of those couple weeks of like no taste and feeling sick and all that stuff. But then I was getting infusions every 3 weeks. So there'd be that week where you're like, I feel normal mostly. Like, like what should we do? And that's when my husband and I started like planning those days. So wanting like the best blanket or something that means the most, we'd be like, okay, we were making salads a lot. We got one of those vertical gardens, the lettuce grows. So we were like, let's go get new olive oils and vinegars for the salads that we make. And we live in LA, so we drove an hour to Santa Barbara and we got like our favorite olive oil and vinegars from the place where you get it. We didn't just go to the supermarket and get one. And it's like those moments that I remember most. And adding in that prioritizing yourself, like just as a person amidst what you're going through that's hard, I think has helped me with prioritizing lots of things since then, like my quality of life and being realistic with a lot of these things that are never ending in so many ways.
Yes. And it goes along with what you're saying about living life to the fullest. It's finding those things. It's moments. It's like little moments are what create your connection and relationship to your kids. They're what create your sense of self, like your joy, all of those things. They aren't like huge things usually. It's like what you remember in your mind is some special 5 minutes that you spend, a day at the beach, a concert, a special experience. Those are all the things that stick in your mind and that really kind of like wrap you up in joy and help you to feel like you're really living and thriving.
Totally. Yeah. The thriving piece, because I use that a lot. That was a term I learned early on, being metastatic, because a lot of, stage 4 and metastatic patients and survivors, thrivers, whatever they want to call themselves, most people use thriver that I met because, we really technically haven't survived. That's not necessarily the reason why I mainly use it, though, because depending on your definition, I mean, a lot of people consider themselves a survivor from day one. These things are all kind of personal and how we view it, like when your cancerversary is. Like I base mine off of when I got the phone call that I had cancer, but some people base it off when they finish chemo or when they got the mammogram or the tat. It's so individual. But with thriving, to me, it's not like meaning that you have to be active and like doing a million things all the time. It's that the goal isn't simply surviving or being alive. And that's how I felt. Like when I look now to before cancer, if someone would ask me how my day was going and it wasn't like, I'd be like, I'm surviving. And so I felt like by outside of it, I always viewed survivor as such a badass label, and that's like empowering. And it's kind of like our battle cry, right? As in the cancer community. And then once I was in it, I just didn't feel as connected to it because I was kind of like, well, wait, when I used this term before, it was based on like the bare minimum, like literally ending the day alive. And I don't think that's fair for that to be anyone's goal, let alone someone going through what we're going through. And so that's my reasoning on it. And like, I don't find any terms offensive or not. It's just, I like to clarify that because I think it's so important people understand that thriving doesn't have to mean that you're like good,
Oh, no.
And that's, I say that because that's like the most common thing people will ask me, like, cause I have hair and all that. And if it comes up that like I have cancer, it's like, but you're good, right? Like you're good now, and
well, I mean,
and you pick and choose who you want to explain it to or not. But yeah, I just think it's important for us to like be able to not minimize who we are in our experience just because of the circumstance. Again, cancer or anything else, like we all deserve to thrive.
absolutely, all of us. Do you have any last advice that you want to share or thoughts that you want to share for other parents that are navigating a cancer journey?
I think the biggest thing, I said earlier, meet yourself where you're at. And I've always felt this way, cancer or not, is there's no better parent for your child or children than you. And you know what's best at that time, and your instinct, you have to feel that that's what's best because we're never going to be perfect. So like we have to just live life knowing that we're putting our best foot forward. And if you are out there parenting with cancer, like you're a badass and we see you. And I think it's amazing and none of us should have to do it, but a lot of us do. And you're not alone. Together we got this for sure. If there's anything we can do from a resource perspective, if you need help setting up a registry, it's pretty easy when you go to wegotthis.org. It's pretty intuitive, but we also, if you email info@wegotthis.org, is just a couple of us who check it, and we have direct, support. We do our best to help, but just know you're not alone and you're doing a great job.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so we can go to wegotthis.org. Any other places we can find you or links that you want to share with us?
Sure. I have been doing some more public speaking and with the launch of the book. So I do have an elissakalver.com website now as well. And Instagram is where I'm the most active, at Elissa Kalver. And then We Got This is at wegotthis.org. Also on TikTok a little bit and Facebook and stuff too, LinkedIn, all the things. But yeah, please follow along and would love to hear about other people's stories as well.
Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of The Space Between. If this show brought you comfort or a sense of community, I'd love for you to subscribe and share it with anyone who might need it too. You can join the conversation on Instagram at thespacebetween_cancer.family and head to amoryKibler.com for more resources designed to support parents navigating cancer. Just remember, you're never alone. This podcast is here as a companion on your journey towards healing, growth, and connection.